already started the recording, so the meeting is going. Officially call the meeting to order. Brenda, are you on the line here? And if so, did you want to take attendance, or is that you, Paul?
I think I will be doing it today. Brenda didn't say one way or the other, but I believe she's actually at the LOC conference today. So I was not sure if she would be attending.
I don't see her on the screen, but
so I am happy to go through the roll call as I see it.
If you wouldn't mind doing that, then maybe just add anyone else arriving afterwards, just so we can at least get this out of the way.
Thank you, Chair. So right now, I'm just going to go down the list as they're on the right side of my screen. We have Ellen Courier from LCOG, Randy Groves, Chair, City of Eugene, Andrew Martin, LTD, Ann Heath Coburg, Dan Collister, LCOG, Don Norton, LTD, Drew Pfefferly, LCOG, Heather Buck, Lane County, John Marshall, Coburg, Kate Wilson, LCOG, Kelly Clark, LCOG, Mark Johnson, LTD, Megan Winter, Coburg. We have Metro TV with us today, Michael Wist from LCOG, Rob Innerfeld, City of Eugene, Sandy Belson, Springfield, Sasha Lartanian, Lane County, Vidal Francis, ODOT, and I'm trying to see attendees list, Cassidy Mills from Lane County, Catherine Rohan, City of Eugene, Jeremy Card, LTD, Lynn Taylor, our minutes recorder, Jennifer Willard just joined us from the City of Eugene. And Chair, as I mentioned, for everybody else that has joined us since, at this point, we do not have a quorum. We need a member from the City of Springfield to join us to establish quorum.
Thank you, Paul. Why don't we skip down to agenda item number 4. Are there any adjustments to the agenda or announcements from MPC members? Seeing,
Chair,
yes.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say I don't have any adjustments to the agenda, and I don't have any other announcements.
Okay, let's see what else we can tick off here. Comments from the audience.
At this time, I would ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak during the comments from the audience. Please raise their hand. I actually see Commissioner Buck with her hand raised, so.
This isn't a comment for us from the audience. I just wanted to mention that I do believe Commissioner Burney is out of town on another meeting, and he won't attend. So if we need quorum, it would. Hello, Sean Van Gordon. I was just about to say his name. So never mind. We're good.
We have a quorum, it looks like, and joining us are Mayor Venice and Mayor Van Gordon. So we should be okay at this point. Do either of the mayors have anything to add to the agenda or comments? All right. Well, we will go back to approval of the August 4th, 2022 and September 14th, 2022 MPC meeting minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes or I'm seeing no proposed changes to the minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Mayor Venice. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, it looks like unanimous approval of the minutes. Okay, let's move on down to item number 6. Metropolitan Planning Organization MPO issues. Is this, Paul, are you going to, no, actually Dan Callister is going to walk us through this.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. So this item is recommendation for final approval to approve programming the MPO's discretionary federal funds for the projects listed in attachment 2 of this item. This would program $22.8 million federal dollars through 2027 and leave a contingency balance of about $900,000. This is the culmination of a project selection process that started back in spring. From among the applications that were submitted, the Transportation Planning Committee, or a TPC, they approved a recommended funding package that was published for a 30-day public comment period in July and August. Public hearing was held at the August 4th MPC when these proposals were first presented to this body. There were comments received through that process that TPC took into consideration when they finalized their current recommendation at their September 15th meeting. Those comments are included for your information as attachment 4. So the action recommended today of MPC is the approval of resolution 2022-07, programming the discretionary federal funds as recommended.
Are there questions? Thank you, Dan. Are there questions from MPC members? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of resolution 2022-07?
I'll move approval.
Moved by Mayor Venice. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Buck. Looks like you're the two twins today. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, we'll list this as unanimously approved. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 6B, and that's Title 6, an Environmental Justice Program Plan Update. And it looks like Ellen, you're up for the presenter.
Yes, that's me. Good morning. We talked a little bit about this last month when we were doing some data collection for this plan. We update this plan fairly regularly, about 3 to 5 years. The Title VI and Environmental Justice Plan outlines kind of our procedures for how we deal with these federal laws. As recipients of federal funding, we need to have procedures in place for ensuring that we meet the requirements of these laws. Title VI refers to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin. There's some additional legislation that came later that added gender, disability, age, and income status. Environmental justice also has additional regulations around how we reach out to minority populations and low-income populations. So this plan really outlines the procedures that we as an MPO follow in order to make sure we're meeting the requirements in those laws. It outlines kind of how we do that in our long-range planning, our public participation, and our decision-making. We also look at ways to enhance these efforts. Not all of that information is included in this plan. We also have additional plans that address these topics, such as our long-range plan and our public participation plan, which goes into more depth about how we do that outreach. But this plan ensures that we are meeting the requirements. We also update the demographic information of our committees and our staff, as well as do a big analysis with our American Community Survey data to see what the population of our NPO is at any given time. In this update, we did what I just said in terms of updating our staffing and committee. We did some updates to our contracting procedures because we now are part of a ODOT program to certify a certified agency for planning. So we have some additional contracting procedures that we follow. So that's been updated in this plan. We updated our profile and our map, and we update the state and federal authorities. There hasn't been a lot of additional regulations that have come, but there is going to be some further guidance that comes out of the latest federal transportation law. So we will have things that come that will be updated as we go in, but we did update the references to those authorities. So the next steps for this plan is today hold a public hearing about the content of what we have for review, collect public comment from now until 30 days. We'll review the plan for adoption in November. And then some ongoing things that we do related to Title VI is we do an annual report to ODOT every fall. that looks at the training that our staff participate in, also does a demographic update for our committees and boards and our MPO population. And then we are going to update our public participation plan in the next year. And I anticipate there'll be a lot of information that's relevant to Title VI that will be in that public participation plan. So those are kind of the next steps for this. I'm happy to answer any questions. I am also going to put a link to a web version of some of the data that's in the plan. I received some feedback from staff that it's kind of hard to see in detailed information on those static maps. So I'm going to put the link to those maps that are on our data portal into the chat. We do use that information pretty regularly in our planning. You might recall for our regional transportation plan, we did some pretty in-depth outreach to a category that we called in the plan. Well, they've historically been called communities of concern. That's kind of a census designation. We changed the language a little bit for the RTP, so you'll see that called historically excluded population in the RTP. But we basically look at where a lot of those populations are in the community and then did specific outreach to those based on those data. So we do use those. They're regularly updated every year when the ACS data comes out. And then another thing about that data I'll touch on before we open for questions is that it is a summary. So even though we update it every year, it's a 5-year summary because they don't have enough data for it to be extremely accurate. So the more years that you include, the better the data. So you'll see it's a summary of 5 years every time we do that update.
Thank you, Ellen. And before we open the public hearing, I would like to give an opportunity for MPC members to ask questions, and keep in mind that following the public hearing, there'll be an opportunity for MPC members to comment. So are there any questions for Ellen? Seeing none, as chair, I open the public hearing.
Chair Groves, at this time, I'll ask if there's anybody that wishes to speak to the public hearing to have them raise their virtual hand. Although I will also say that right now there's only staff and our minutes recorder and members in attendance. So I don't believe we have anybody speaking for the public hearing.
Okay, well, seeing no one, this last chance, seeing no one here to speak at the public hearing, I'll close the public hearing and I'll open the floor to MPC members for comments. Okay, I'm not seeing Mayor Venice.
Thank you. I just appreciate both the maps and the presentation, and I am just recalling that when we talked about our RTP plan, we wanted to talk about improved public engagement. We wanted to be coming back to that periodically, and I'm understanding it's sometimes hard to get those metrics. So I really want to appreciate both the maps and the improved outreach that you're envisioning as part of this project. And so thank you for that work. It was the maps are quite, even if they're not as big as we'd like, they're very interesting. And I think it's very interesting to see how dispersed across the community we experience poverty. We have dispersed minority populations. We have dispersed elderly. It's really community wide. We don't have sort of one corner of the community that is predominantly people that are lower socioeconomic status. So that in some ways, that's very informative as we're thinking about our planning and where we need better transit, where we need better sidewalks, where we need better buses. It's really saying, oh yeah, really pretty much you need this everywhere. Because everywhere there are people who are going to need this improved level of service. So I really appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no more comments from the MPC, there's also a item here, any specific direction that we should be giving to staff before we close this item? I'm seeing none. That tells me that the MPC is satisfied with this. So let's move on to agenda item 6C, funding request for electronic transportation improvement program. Looks like we're back to Dan Callister.
That's right. Thank you. So this item is a funding request for MPO discretionary funds. TPC, the Transportation Planning Committee, recommends approval of the request not to exceed $40,000 for the Electronic Transportation Improvement Program, or ETIP, licensing and implementation, where it's being requested up to $40,000 because the precise amount is not known, but we know it won't exceed 40,000. And once we do know that exact amount, we'll need to program those funds quickly so as not to hold up the contracting process. So a little background on what this item is, the ETIP. So over the last 5 years, the Central Lane MPO has been spearheading this statewide effort to implement an online platform that the Oregon MPOs can use to maintain their metropolitan tips in a unified, consistent, transparent, and public-facing way that would reduce some human errors and create a lot of efficiencies, and would also communicate really efficiently with ODOT's statewide tip in real time. So we went through a pretty thorough RFP process. We have a third-party developer that we're working with now that we selected through that process. We're working on the contract with them right now, and ODOT, Portland Metro, Salem Kaiser MPO, and Central Lane MPO are negotiating amongst ourselves, finalizing those terms and conditions, including each agency's financial responsibility. So the up to 40,000 would cover Central Lane MPO's share of the implementation costs, as well as the first year of licensing. Are there any other questions about this?
I'm not seeing any. No questions from the MPC? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve programming up to $40,000 urban STBG funds for electronic transportation improvement program?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Buck.
I'll second it.
This is a trend.
It's a good thing. It's a good partnership.
Seconded by Mayor Venice. Anyone opposed? Okay, it looks like it unanimously passed. Thank you. And we are on to agenda item 6D, federal performance-based planning and programming, performance measurement targets. Kelly Clark.
Thank you. My screen's set up here. So we've talked a little bit about performance-based planning and programming, and this came from MAP 21 and FAST Act federal transportation bills. They required states and MPOs to establish performance-based planning and programming in our regional transportation plans and transportation improvement programs. And our region addressed these requirements by establishing regional, like local level performance measures in our 2045 regional transportation plan, and also in the MTIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. And those measures are tied to our local goals and intended to measure outcomes over time. And the legislation also required that United States Department of Transportation establish performance measures that apply to all state departments of transportation, as well as all MPOs. And those measures are related to safety, pavement and bridge condition, system performance, and condition management and air quality, or CMAC funded projects. And states and MPOs must integrate these federal performance measures into our regional transportation plans and MTIPs. And so Central Lane MPO coordinated with ODOT on target setting for each measure for the first reporting cycle, which covered the years 2018 through 2022. And MPOs have the option to either support state targets or develop our own. And so for the first reporting round, MPC signed a resolution to support the state targets at their November 1st, 2018 meeting. And so now we're at the time where we must act again on the federal performance measures. So today we're focusing on measures related to pavement and bridge condition, system performance, and CMAC. The safety performance measures and targets are also a vital metric, but are part of the Transportation Safety Action Plan, and so not bundled with these that we're hearing about today. So first, today in compliance with our federal regulatory timelines, we're here to first review the state targets for pavement and bridge condition, system performance, and CMAC performance measures. And then second, we'll address the 2 new CMAC performance measures and targets from the MAP 21 and FAST Act legislation. So first are the pavement and bridge condition, system performance, and CMAC performance measures. And in full, they are pavement condition, which are a percentage of pavement on the interstate system in good condition, percentage of pavements on the interstate system in poor condition, percentage of pavements on the non-interstate national highway system, or NHS, in good condition, and then percentage of pavement on the non-interstate NHS in poor condition. Bridge condition measures include percentage of NHS bridges by deck area classified in good condition, and then that same metric in poor condition, so bridge by deck area. The national highway system performance measures are the percentage of person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable, percentage of person miles traveled on the non-interstate NHS that are reliable, and then truck travel time reliability, which is intended to measure freight reliability. And then the CMAC measure that we've already supported are the total emission reductions of PM10 from CMAC projects. These measures and targets for the 2018 to 2022 reporting cycle are included in the 2045 Regional Transportation Plan. And for the upcoming reporting cycle, which is 2022 through 2026, ODOT updated the statewide targets for each of these measures. And they use calculation methodologies and data sets required by FHWA rulemaking, which is fairly prescriptive because these calculations and data sets must be available to all state DOTs and MPOs nationwide. And so the statewide targets are available in table 1 of your packet memo. And Paul, I don't know if it would make sense, we could bring those on the screen as well. But state staff coordinated with ODOT and other MPOs throughout ODOT and as they updated their targets and are comfortable with them as presented. And TPC discussed and recommended supporting the state targets at their 2018 meeting. The second part of this agenda item is the 2 new CMAC performance measures and targets. So those 2 are the annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita and the percentage of non-single occupancy vehicle travel. And these 2 measures are new to us. They originally applied just to the urbanized areas with more than 1 million people that are also in non-attainment and maintenance areas for ozone, carbon monoxide, or particulate matter. So in the second period of performance, which is what we're now entering into, that population threshold lowered to 200,000. And so that includes us. And so that's why we're now reviewing those measures. So the first one is the annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita. And this measure is intended to measure traffic congestion on the national highway system. And as you can see, those are all kind of higher level, our hierarchy of the roadways that we're measuring here. So the Federal Highway Administration provides guidance on the threshold for excessive delay, and it's based on travel time at 20 miles per hour or 60% of the posted speed limit travel time, whichever is greater, and measured in 15-minute increments. It's measured using a data platform called RIDIS, which measures historic annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita. And it's a data platform that's nationally accessible to states and MPOs so that we have equal access for our decision-making and responding to federal performance-based planning and programming. So for this CLMPO Central Lane region, our area averaged 3.64 hours of annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita between 2017 and 2021. And TPC reviewed that data along with the regional and state policy to accept more congestion or delay in lieu of supporting transportation options and efficient system management versus building additional capacity right away. And informed by the data and in support of state and regional policy, TPC recommended for 2024, a peak hour excessive delay target of 8.5 hours, and for 2026, 9 hours. And the second new CMAC performance measure is percentage of non-single occupancy vehicle travel. And that can include travel via carpool, van, public transportation, commuter rail, walking, bicycling, or telecommuting. And it's intended to help measure and carry out the CMAC program by encouraging investments that increase multimodal solutions and vehicle occupancy levels, and strategies to reduce both criteria, pollutant emissions, and congestion. And it's measured using the 5-year American Community Survey Journey to Work data from the Census Bureau. And that data shows that 69.8% of total workers within our region drove alone, or the converse of that is that 30.2% met the criteria for non-SOV travel, which then becomes our baseline. And so based on this data and the policy to continue increasing non-SOV travel, TPC recommended a 2024 non-SOV target of 33% and a 2026 non-SOV target of 35%. And so today as staff, we recommended supporting the state targets through the 2026 reporting cycle. And that includes all of the targets presented here today. By supporting the state targets, we will continue to support the state in working towards the measures identified. The state will continue to quantify and report on the measures, including for our region. And at this point, there are no penalties assessed for not meeting our established targets. So we feel confident in what we've presented. If we choose not to support the state targets, we must continue including, if we do choose to support the state targets, we will continue including the performance measures and targets in our RTP and planning towards achieving the targets through our performance-based planning and programming framework. We'll continue including a description in the MTIP and the anticipated effects of the TIP towards achieving the targets, and continue coordinating with ODOT, who will then be responsible for calculating the data and reporting to FHWA. If we choose to establish our own targets, the MPO must follow all of the above requirements, and then also establish targets for each measure in coordination with the ODOT performance measure coordinator. And we must follow the guidelines and practices to appropriately set targets for our area, develop programs and projects that will contribute towards meeting the target, and quantify and report those targets to ODOT on an annual basis. Given our comfort level with what the state's targets are and the conversations we've had with TPC, staff recommends supporting state targets as recommended by TPC. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. That's a lot.
Thank you, Kelly. Mayor Venice.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I think you brought me just to the verge of understanding this, and so maybe you can take me over the top. So, just to go back to the beginning, the annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita from 2017 to 2021 was 3.64, and now we are recommending targets that are 8.5. So we're raising those targets because there's recognition there's more traffic, we're a growing state. Is that?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Mayor Venice. The data from 2017 to 2021, where we averaged 3.64 hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita. That's a data point, that's our baseline. So that's kind of what we experienced during that time frame for those years. In conversations with TPC, that we felt comfortable in raising that, or considering accepting a higher level of congestion in recognition of where we are as a state and region around supporting transportation options and efficient system management versus dealing with capacity by maintaining that baseline level.
So we're assuming that we're not going to move quickly enough with our options to actually reduce this kind of congestion. Like we're just if we keep going the way we're going, we're just saying these are going to just be more congested.
And that's a good clarification. We haven't done that like into the future projection with this. This is looking at where we are historically. and establishing a target that it's kind of an art versus a science almost. It's like, here's where we believe we would be comfortable with. We're not saying that's what we know we will be in this time frame.
This is the problem I always have with this week, because this is always so technical and so detailed that I appreciated your remarks around the RTP, because I feel as if we had a long conversation in the RTP around what our priorities were and wanting that particular planning document to be sort of reference to our greenhouse gas emissions and our equity, and so I'm just hoping that you can help us continue to connect the dots around when we're facing an investment choice, that we're relating it to, what this projected, is this going to help us make progress on these goals, is basically what I'm after. And because if we're making all these investments, but we're just still saying, well, we're just expecting more congestion because we're just a growing community, it feels to me like there's a miss there. I mean, I would feel that regionally we would want to say, we're making these investments because we want to find alternatives so we compensate for that growth and we're not experiencing repeated congestion. So it's hard for me to kind of see that landscape through all this detail, but it would be helpful for me if there's a reminder of what that trajectory is and what we're voting on and how it impacts our progress.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think that our intent is to lay some groundwork, or lay the framework, which we feel we've done with the first round of federal performance measures that we were adopted, or that we voted to support the state for. And then almost more importantly, the ones that we discussed through the RTP process and came to include in that plan, that we'll continue monitoring and reporting on as that plan kind of ages. And it was adopted in January 2022. So it's still kind of fresh. And as we continue on with that, as it gets adopted every 4 years, be able to report on those measures, and then also integrate those measures into our decision-making process, as Dan has explained through the projects that we've just voted on funding.
Yeah, thank you. And that just one final comment about that. When we passed the RTP, we did that, and this body was, really asking for sort of more regular updates and reminders about where we are. And so I'm just planting that seed, that recognizing that continuing to connect the dots for us about where we are on the RTP, what it said, where are we with that? Are there other, would be, so this feels like another point in time there where we're with this decision that we help kind of keep that framework in mind of what we're aiming for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Mayor Venice, I really appreciate your line of questioning there. I think that's spot on, and things that we need to keep at the front and center for us. Kelly, I have a question here on the SOV travel. Do you have any data that indicates whether that's trending up or down?
It's maintained fairly steady. I can see if we can pull up the trends, but overall it's maintained fairly steady.
As a percentage, which would allow for growth in population. Okay. And then I apologize if I missed this in the packet. I admit I skimmed through parts of it fairly quickly, but I know that this is mostly focused on congestion and surface management. It's something separate that we look at for seismic upgrades and retrofits, correct, for the bridges? Because those are going to be incredibly important to us in a seismic event. That's going to be the main way we are going to get supplies into and out of our region.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, Chair Groves. The metrics for these are specific for the bridge, specific to the percentage of bridges on the NHS, the National Highway System, by deck area classified in good condition. So there's a specific metric of how federal highway expects us to measure that. And it is kind of limited. The state does have other key performance measures that they measure more specific to resiliency, I think, and not just the NHS. But again, this is kind of that limited perspective of just the performance measures that were required to measure out of that FHWA rulemaking.
Thank you. That was my take, but I just wanted to make sure that was correct. I don't know how the rest of the MPC feels, but something on the seismic condition of our bridges is something I have some interest in from an emergency management standpoint. For some time in the future, I think it would be good for this body to review that and kind of keep that as a lens that we look at funding options on for the future. So that's just a comment. Thank you. And Paul. You're muted, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I will just add to your comment that, as Kelly alluded, the federal performance measures do not speak to seismic resilience for structures at this point. ODOT has its own state key performance measures for their system. But what I wanted to add is that you may recall when we adopted the RTP, there were a number of follow-on specific topics and white papers and issues that we were going to be working on. And one of those is resilience and emergency route planning. LCOG staff has started working on that and has started coordinating with some of the local staff. So you will be hearing more about that. And we can note that reporting to the extent we have data on our bridge conditions with respect to seismic resilience is part of that.
Great. I appreciate hearing that. I know we've heard periodically on specific seismic upgrade projects, but just trying to get more of a snapshot of what the system looks like, because all it takes is one bridge to go out, and it doesn't matter if the rest are all seismically upgraded. One bridge is a point of failure in the system, and it's just something that I think we should continue working towards. So thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions on this subject? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve support for the state targets for federal performance measures? My twins?
I'll move. I so move.
Moved by Mayor Venice.
I'll second. Hey,
Seconded by
women
Commissioner.
getting things done here. It's good.
We'll keep her going. Seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there any opposition to this motion? I'm not seeing any. It looks like it passes unanimously. Okay, on to item 6E, letter of support for City of Eugene grant application. Paul? Or excuse me, Rob Innerfield.
Hello, I'm Rob Innerfeld, Transportation Planning Manager for the City of Eugene. I am here to talk about our application for Reconnecting Communities grant, and I'm going to share my screen. I have a very brief PowerPoint. Our staff member, Trish Sharma, put this together, and she's been doing a great job working on different federal grants that we've been applying for. Can everybody see that? There we go. So Reconnecting Communities is a new federal grant program that comes out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And it's really for communities that are separated by different kinds of transportation infrastructure barriers, basically, that in many cases are highways, but they could be other kinds of barriers too. And there's grants both for planning and for capital construction. And so what we're planning to apply for is a capital grant to actually build the River Road and Santa Clara pedestrian bicycle bridge that I believe we've talked about that before this group before when that project was added to the RTP. And it would, I'll get back, I'll talk about that more in a moment. This is just some more information about the grant program. There's approximately, I think it's $1 billion available over the next 5 years. So it's $200 million per year. So if we're not successful this round, it's certainly something we could go back for and apply for again in a year. We're not looking to fully fund the project through this. We're actually hoping also to get a federal, what used to be called earmarks, I think they're now called community project support or something like that, from Congressman DeFazio, that is part of the federal budget that was passed by the House, but not yet approved by the Senate. So we'll see if that comes through. So we're planning to request $6.5 million from the Reconnecting Communities grant program, and then the city's 20% match would be approximately $1.3 million. So this project right now, students who go to North Eugene High School, if they want to walk or bike to school, they have to basically cross at the River Road Beltline interchange, walk underneath that highway. It's very unsafe, not just unsafe, but a really unpleasant environment for kids to be walking or biking. And so this bridge, which this is a kind of early graphic, and it would, the location on the right is the one that is preferable. It's actually less expensive, has fewer sort of engineering challenges, and it would be closer to the school. And then we would also make connectivity improvements in the neighborhoods for walking and biking. And so, it wouldn't just be something for North Eugene High School students, but it would also benefit the broader community by giving people a more safer and more comfortable route to traverse north-south west of River Road. And here's a quote from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg about the program. And I'm just here to take any questions. Well, we're asking for a letter of support today from the MPC, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. If we could go back to the regular screen, are there any questions or comments from the MPC on this project? I'm not seeing any, so I just want to say this is something that I feel is very important. We have children, in some cases young children, at risk going through a very congested area just on a sidewalk. And, speaking from experience, I have been on a number of calls when I was a firefighter to pedestrians that were well into the sidewalk that still got hit by cars and vehicles that jumped the curbs. And the more separation of space we can put between our children and vehicles, but really anyone in vehicles, is a good thing. And the neighborhood built around Beltline, but it bisects a neighborhood and cuts off access for use beyond school. So I feel pretty strongly about this, and I hope there will be a motion and supported to write a letter of recommendation. Mayor Venice.
And I'm happy to put that motion on the table because I agree with you that this is a really, really important project and would very much like to see it go through. So I'm hoping I have a second.
Just one last check. Is there anyone else that has a question or comment? John.
Yes, just curious about the public input on the design. I also really approve this project since I grew up in that general neighborhood a long time ago, even before Beltline was built, and then saw it built and saw how they basically segmented that whole community through there. So I just wondering how much public input will there be on the design of this project?
It's a good question.
We'll definitely be engaging the community on the design. So far, we had the public input has been more about do people support doing the project? We've engaged with the neighborhood associations on each side of Beltline with the school district. We're just starting to do some outreach to the people who live right directly near the Beltline to get their input. But we will be definitely engaging with folks on the design of the bridge.
Good question. Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Mayor Venice.
I'm happy to put a motion on the table to approve submitting a letter of support for this project.
And is there a second? I'm sorry, is that you, John, seconding?
I do. Yes, I second that motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any opposed? Looks like unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6F, and this is follow-up and next steps. Is there an ODOT update?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have a couple of updates to share with everyone. First and foremost, I don't know if you're probably aware of, but Mac Lynn, our division administrator, has managed to secure $1 billion to support our ADA program. If you recall, years back, the agency has been under suit trying to help fix or address a lot of the ADA issues that we've had around the state. And just recently, Mac Lynn went to task for us. And if you're familiar with Tony Snyder, I believe he's our ADA program manager. And so he's been tasked with the charge of using this $1 billion. Some of it's bond money, some of it's going to be part of the STIP as we move forward to help address many of the ADA ramps that we have throughout the state. And I'm pretty sure they have a game plan together how they plan on targeting the various cities, municipalities that we have state roads on to try to deliver those ramps and so forth. So that's one update I'd like to share with you. Another update is I had a chance to take a look, or let's just say glimpse at the 24-27 STIP that's coming out. I do understand that it's going to be going out for comment come the first of the year, right around January. So do expect that to be coming out fairly soon. I didn't get to see the entire list, but I know that it's right around the corner. One third thing too was I was asked by the OTC to share a couple of projects that they would like to showcase around the state. And there's two projects that I presented to them that touch on congestion and safety. That's our Beltline improvements, which is here locally. And I wanted to at least get this project out statewide, if you will, to get some attention for this area, as well as also, you have to understand behind my intentions too, is try to get as much funding as I can to keep it going. So that's one thing that's pretty good for the area that I'm trying to put out. And if you're probably not aware of right now, we do have a couple of folks that are leaving the agency. Sonny Chickering, he has retired as the Region 2 manager. His retirement is effective October 1st. So he will remain with us for a short time, about 3-4 months, maybe five, depending on how long it takes to bring the next area manager, the next region manager into play. And if you're probably not aware too, our Assistant Director of Operations, Cooper Brown, has also turned in his resignation, and he will be leaving the agency soon. I do understand him of himself as well. He will be hanging out for another maybe 2-3 months to help with the transition, but then he would be moving on. That's all that I have for everyone today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Vidal. Please keep us apprised of especially that ADA money, and if there's projects coming to our area that would be of interest to this group, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for ODOT and Vidal? Seeing none, we'll move on to Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, project changes. This is information only. Paul?
Chair, yes, thank you. Just as always, every month we put in to your packet for your information the administrative actions that either staff or the TPC, Transportation Planning Committee, have taken on TIP project changes. So if there's any questions, Dan would be happy to answer them.
I'm seeing no questions. I guess the last item under 6F is next steps and agenda build. Do you have anything for us on that, Paul?
The only thing that I'd like to mention, Chair, is I am thinking most of you are aware, but if not, the Senate did last month, the Oregon Senate did last month confirm a new appointee to the Oregon Transportation Commission, Lee Beyer. So we're all, I think, fairly familiar with former Senator Beyer. He will take his chair on the OTC starting in January. And so I would just suggest that shortly after the new year, perhaps one of the NPC members, perhaps the new chair at that time, might want to reach out to him and invite him to join us for a meeting and have a discussion with us.
I think that's a great suggestion. Happy to see former Senator Beyer appointed to that role. I'm sure he'll be a strong and active voice on behalf of our region down here. Well, with that, is there anything else to come before the MPC? Going, gone. Okay, with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Everybody have a nice day and enjoy the rest of your week, and go Ducks.